first and foremost, how is everything out there on the on the trail for the vice president and for Senator Harris, first and foremost, and also kind of give me a quick rundown of just in terms of Latino outreach, because it's obviously a very important voting bloc, and this is the first time I think in U.S. history that Latinos will be the majority of majority of people of color of a particular voting bloc. So it's very important. So go into that for me, and just overall what it's been like on this campaign trail, especially since the DNC.
Vice President Biden and Senator Harris are bringing a tremendous amount of energy to the campaign trail. I know they're busy doing events all over the country, virtually and some in person. This is crunch time. It's the last 60 some odd days of the campaign, and I think we had a good convention. They're delivering a strong message about opportunity in this country and making sure that we heal and start bringing our country back together. Vice President Biden is someone that people see as a real leader, somebody that has his priorities right, that will put things like addressing the coronavirus and ensuring that we get through this pandemic, recovering our economy. He'll put those things first on behalf of the American people. And this is going to be an election that is all hands on deck. We can't take anything for granted. Many people didn't think that Donald Trump was going to win in 2016, and he won Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania collectively by 77,000 votes. That means that all of us have a role to play in ensuring that we get out and vote, and we get our friends, family, neighbors, co-workers to get out and vote as well. The Latino community is a growing community in this country. It's going to play a vital role, not only in the usual places like Florida and Colorado and Nevada, but also even in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where you have quickly growing Latino communities, even though they're smaller. In such a close margin race, it can make a difference. And I'm pleased that the Biden campaign and the DNC are making strong investments on outreach and delivering a message to that community. And my hope is that on November 3rd, we're going to see record Latino turnout. I think that we can do it because I think that people see a hopefulness in the vision of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They also see that Donald Trump just is not up to this job. And I think that's going to turn people out.
So, and Secretary Castro, when I think about, you talk about the about Vice President Biden, you were a part of the Obama administration as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development from 14 to 17. What was it like working with the Vice President during that time period, and what did you see from him that would help confirm the belief that he would be the right person to lead this country?
He's a man of character, and he's a man who has the wisdom and experience to lead very well. I'll give you a great example of that. I remember going down to Wilmington, Delaware with the Vice President on Veterans Day 2016 for a ceremony to mark the functional end of veteran homelessness. They had been working to make sure that every veteran who was homeless in that community, that they had a place to stay, that they were housed. And to hear the Vice President speak about the commitment that our nation has to veterans and the obligation that we have to make sure they have a place to stay, to live, I got a real sense of his character, his sense of duty to country, and his respect for our nation's veterans and what they went through for our country.
And we could talk for hours on especially a certain controversy that has arisen regarding our veterans. I will, knowing that you have limited time here, you mentioned battleground states such as Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I'm in Philadelphia right now. My home state is Michigan. I'm originally from Detroit, and I saw firsthand how quickly Michigan changed. I see the burgeoning Latino communities. I know in the city of Detroit, for example, especially Southwest Detroit, we have a distinct Mexican community there. Same thing goes in Lansing, Michigan, in the state capital. They're spread out across the state. That is a very important block. Your home state of Texas has always been interesting to me because I've been telling people in political circles when we've had these conversations that I've always kept an eye on Texas as being that next state that could turn. And I noticed on your Instagram feed as well, you haven't shied away from noting that that could happen. I've seen enough polling where the vice president is either tied or one up or one or two down, where I know since I think it's Jimmy Carter was the last Democrat to win Texas in a presidential election, and it hadn't largely been competitive until 16, where Hillary Clinton did pretty well in the state of Texas for a Democrat. What are the chances of a state like Texas becoming the next battleground state? Michigan, we already know. Here in Pennsylvania, I see it all the time. Wisconsin, places like even a state like maybe Minnesota, places like those kind of states. What about a state like Texas? Because I think that with the changing demographics there and the distinct Latino population, obviously a very large African American population, and that's more of a progressive lean as we've seen in Texas in decades. What are your thoughts on the potential of a state like Texas eventually flipping blue?
Well, 2020 is a year where Texas may well go blue. It's very competitive. Sometimes people dismiss that idea because they feel like they hear that every 4 years. What's different in 2020 is that during the Donald Trump era, the state has been rapidly moving away from Republicans. Hillary Clinton lost by 9 points to Donald Trump in 2016. That was the best showing for anybody since 1996. In 2018, Beto O'Rourke got within 2.5 points of Ted Cruz. Democrats won 2 congressional seats, 2 state Senate seats, and 12 House seats. And now in 2020, poll after poll, and there have been 7 or 8 of these polls over time, poll after poll shows that these candidates are basically tied. And usually it has Biden up by 1 or 2 points. That's because of 2 things. In Texas, the suburbs are abandoning the Republican Party. People that used to be Republicans feel like Trump does not represent their values. Just look at what he said about our military veterans. I mean, people feel like this guy just doesn't get it. He's not of the right character. He doesn't have the right priorities. He hasn't been effective responding to coronavirus. The suburbs are abandoning him. And also the demographic changes that are happening. The Black community is growing. The Hispanic community is growing. The Asian American community is growing. So that you have places like Fort Bend County that used to be represented by none other than Tom DeLay, that now have a county supervisor that is Indian American. They have growing minority population, and it's flipped. Now it's blue. And you can tell that story across the state. So these 2 dynamics are coming together in the year 2020 to produce a very competitive Texas. And the thing is, if Democrats win the 38 electoral votes of Texas, it's game over for Republicans. There's nowhere for them to go. We got to earn that, though. We can't take it for granted. And so everybody is working hard out here to make sure that we do the outreach, the voter registration, deliver a strong, compelling message about a hopeful future that Vice President Biden can help create.
And I know your time is very, very short here. The importance of voting. I've seen it reflects across the country. It showed in Michigan in 2016. I've harped on that on this podcast and in other places. It really bothered me what happened in Michigan in 2016, how people don't show up or people didn't take it seriously. What is the message you can get to someone who, having seen the DNC, seen all this the last 3.5 years, who is still on the fence about voting, doesn't think that it's worth the effort to go out and do it, it won't change anything? Or what do you say to that person who might be jaded and says, what is in it for me? Why should I do this? What's the difference between these two?
Voting is the only way in our democracy to actually change anything. There are a lot of people right now that are hurting. A lot of middle-class families, a lot of lower-income families, people who are facing the threat of eviction, people who have lost relatives to the coronavirus, people who are concerned because they've been out of work or they think, they might lose their job because our economy is so shaky right now. If you want to change things, if you want our nation to go in a better direction, if you want a leader who actually will put your family's job opportunities, health outcomes, your kids' education as their top priority, then going out and voting is the best way to make that happen, and making sure that you vote for Joe Biden. We had a very close election last time. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by almost 3 million votes, but she lost the Electoral College, including by losing the state of Pennsylvania barely. That means that every single vote counts. Your vote does count.
And Secretary Castro, just I would also like to quickly ask you. You were the Secretary of HUD, and housing is such an important part of our society now. We're seeing it with how the COVID pandemic has just caused all these economic issues. People are starting to be evicted from their homes and losing their homes. What type of a housing crisis could we be staring at here the next few years following this?
A lot of folks out there will know that we were facing a rental affordability crisis in this country before COVID-19. So many families were paying more than a third of their income in rent. We had a lot of people being priced out of the market, people having to double up. Homelessness was going back up in Donald Trump's America. And then COVID hit. And today, because so many people have lost their jobs, by one estimate, up to 30 million people could face eviction through October. That means that we need immediate relief. The Democrats in the House of Representatives passed the HEROES Act that would include an eviction moratorium and also direct rental assistance that people need, because now they have backed up rent, unpaid rent. Donald Trump says that he put an eviction moratorium in place through the Centers for Disease Control, an emergency order. The problem is that that's a short-term Band-Aid, because it doesn't do anything about the fact that in a couple of months after the election, that rent is all going to be due. And what are people going to do? They don't have 5 or 6 months worth of rent, and then they're going to be facing eviction. What Joe Biden and the Democrats want is they want a real solution that keeps people in their homes, is going to make sure that people don't get evicted until we can get our economy back on track.